Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Enhancing Your Live show with Chris and Larkin. Larkin will be joining us momentarily, so I thought I'd get the show started today. Today, we're going to talk about how to manage our expectations, experience, and standards in 2024. Now, if you're anything like me, you've bumped up against this throughout your life. We've created goals and plans and strategies and expectations, and we're gonna we're gonna do this, and we're gonna release this, and I'm gonna stand up for this, and I'm gonna make changes here, and I'm gonna make changes there, and then all of a sudden, life happens, and the unexpected happens. Things show up that we weren't planning for, or life uh, and our goals don't manifest as quickly as we hoped, and losing that faith and that consistency um, tends to limit those results. And I know for myself, I try to focus on the process, not the result, because the results aren't always under our control. But the processes most of the time can. The more consistent our habits, the more likely we are able to maintain that frequency, maintain that vibration, maintain that consistency. So even when the results aren't showing up as we've expected, we understand that we're moving towards them. I remember when I was early in my entrepreneur career, and sales career, this goal setting was a big thing, right? And every year you were like, I'm going to make six figures. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then a few months in, you're like, uh, I'm not even close to doing that. I don't even know how that's possible. What was I thinking? And that discouragement, and maybe shame and guilt for maybe not being as consistent, or being as aggressive, or as being as enthusiastic as we thought we were going to be, really starts to weigh on us. And then, next thing we know, we let go of that goal, that standard, or expectation of ourselves and other people. Sometimes having expectations for others is a dangerous slope to ski on, because we have absolutely no control over what other people do. We may influence it, we may help, we may hold space. We can be there as a guide, and as a friend, and as a partner in a relationship, or in a business, or whatever. But ultimately, the only thing that we can control is ourselves, and how that we show up in life. How are we consistently planning, and thinking, and feeling, and behaving? And those are under our control. And so today we want to talk about some of those things. And while we're waiting for Larkin to join us, I know she's super busy today, and with the cold weather and all that kind of stuff, she's got some things that she has to handle on her end, with her horses at her barn and stuff like that. So I believe she's going to join us en route to that. So I'm going to talk about standards a little bit today. And there's a big push right now for boundaries, and things like that. And boundaries aren't, in my view, aren't for ways to control other people. It's to me, it's more of a standard. I remember, I was in a situation, and I was talking about that. Um, um, uh, Sorry, I was just reading Brad's thing here, and um, that's funny, Brad. Um, but and I was talking to him about standards, and I said, the thing is I tend to have a high standard for myself, and allow other people to show up as themselves. And one of the things that I do have sometimes challenge with is is maintaining that standard. Like I won't be lied to. Don't lie to me. Just tell me the truth. The truth will hurt. A lie will hurt a lot more. And at the end of the day, we can work through things. We can talk through things. We can walk through things. But the hardest thing to do is repair trust, when it's been damaged. And that's why my standard is not to lie, and do the best to my ability to tell my absolute truth in the moment. Of course, it can change, but where I'm at in that moment, that's the only thing that I can control. So what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling in the moment is my truth. When I share it, and through conversation, through understanding, through collaboration, those things can shift. But what are your non-negotiables? What are your non-negotiable standards? I'm not going to be lied to. I'm not going to be cheated on. I'm not going to be, those types of things. And if you have those for other people, then those are the standards for yourself, because we can't hold other people to a standard that we're not willing to hold ourselves. It doesn't mean that others won't still do it. I've been in a lot of friendships and relationships and things like that, and sometimes people, will tell a little white lie, or they'll minimize what was said, or whatever, because they don't want to cause hurt. It's something that we've been conditioned to do. I know my parents used to do it to me growing up all the time. And the thing that I learned from that, though, is if you can't be 100% honest, then how can you be 100% authentic? And I think authenticity is way more valuable than most other attributes that we can focus on. And so, what are your standards? How to maintain those standards? One of the best ways that I've known throughout my life to hold myself accountable for those expectations and experiences and standards is to write them down. Because if we're not aware of them, if we're not reminded of them on a consistent basis, especially in the very beginning of changing our behaviors and our thought patterns, it's really easy to just allow the subconscious to overpower our conscious intention, and we lose focus, because what we give our attention to is where our energy goes. So if we're focusing on what we aren't doing, we're not focusing on what we are doing. And that makes it really hard sometimes to feel empowered, to feel like we have control, or that we're able to overcome challenging circumstances or challenging habits, or anything like that. I can speak directly on addiction and substance addiction, mainly, and I can tell you the things that allowed me to stop doing those things that were destructive was holding myself accountable and creating a plan to not do it, to release it. Now, some are easier than others. I've shared experiences about my drug addictions and my alcohol for addiction. For me, that was easy to drop. The ones that are a little more challenging sometimes are the ones that don't seem to cause that big of a negative effect. Like I'm going to reduce, I'm not going to eat sugar, processed sugar. and you go to a party or a gathering, and there's some tasty cookies or some sweets there, and you're like, well, no, I'm gonna cut that out. And then someone says, oh, you gotta live a little bit, right? You gotta, they're really tasty. I made them from scratch, and blah 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 blah. And then you're like, okay, I'll give in. And then you give in. Now that doesn't totally set us back for the whole year. That's a very minute thing. But if we allow ourselves a little bit of grace, a little bit of leeway, well, then we can flow with life a little bit easier. When we're really rigid, and I will attest to this, a lot of times when I create things and standards and new habits and things like that, I can get a little rigid. Where it's like, I got to do this, 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 because I know with continuous effort, they say 22 days or 21 days creates a life, creates a change in our life, but 90 days will create a lifestyle change permanently. We've made new neural connections and all that kind of stuff. So now all of a sudden, it's not even a thing. And I can tell you, when I first stopped drinking, back in 2016, I believe it was a little awkward going into bars and restaurants where they didn't have anything for me to drink, because that was just the way it was back then. Occasionally you could, they would have expensive bottled water or something like that, but there wasn't a whole lot of drinks available to have, and so you felt a little awkward because you weren't participating like everybody else was. And now over the last few years, from my understanding, not that I've ever drank any of them, but there's a lot of mocktails and non-alcoholic options and things like that. So that's awesome for those who enjoy the taste of those things, and still want to be participatory in the social thing. For me, I never really drank because I enjoyed the taste of the drink. I drank because I wanted to get messed up. I wanted to catch a buzz. I wanted to get messed up. So, for me, those mocktails and stuff like that, I've never tried them. So I don't know how close they are toward to the real thing. I've talked to a lot of friends about it that do walk that path and have tried them, and they're like, oh, it tastes just like it. And I'm like, great, but I never really enjoyed the taste of beer. I never, vodka and Captain Morgan's was my alcohol of choice, and it was like, I really have no desire to drink that if it doesn't have the effect. So for me, it was easy to let it go. And that's where grace comes in. Grace allows us to relax a little bit, and understand that for the most part, it's not going to kill us to release our egoic control or conscious control over a certain circumstance. And we can just be more of an observer than an absorber of that, and just say, okay, I'm going to let this go for a little bit. I'm gonna, chill and see what happens. And that can also lead us down a very slippery slope. So we do have to be mindful of these things. We have to really be present to what it is that we want to do. I was just at one of my side gigs, and I was getting ready to make some food for myself, and they were cooking bacon on the flat top, and there was still a half a flat top left, right? And I'm like, oh, can I squeeze in here and make my sandwich? And everybody knows how mindful I am about eating and all that kind of stuff. And the comment was, well, if you're not going to be offended by the bacon, and I was like, it'll be a nice teaser, but I haven't eaten bacon in years. um, and the reason I gave up pork and all that kind of stuff was it just called to me not to eat it. And then, of course, there's all the concern about the parasites and how they've been raised, and all those various different things. And I just, for me, had chosen that, that's a food that I can live without. So I make that choice. And a little bit of bacon grease got on my egg, I think, because I tasted a little bit of bacon, and it was tasty. It was delicious. It brought me back to why I enjoyed eating bacon earlier in my life. But at the same time, I know that that's not for me. That's not what I'm attempting to do in my life. That's a standard for me. A standard for me is taking care of myself, taking care of my body. And was it detrimental to me? No. So you know what? It's okay. I needed to get back here to start the podcast. So I wasn't gonna make a big deal out of it, and because this was more important. So here I am. Still got my lunch, all good. It was tasty, nice little treat, flavored treat that I don't get all the time. But at the same time, I'm not gonna beat myself up. I would have never even told the story of this had it not been for this podcast. So I'm not going to beat myself up over the fact that happened. I could go on and on and on and on and on about expectation versus experience, because we all expect for the best, right? We all want the best to happen, and there are the sayings, prepare for the worst, expect the best. So it's also being aware that sometimes things don't show up the way that we hope them to show up. And that's okay, because that tells us where we are currently are. That's it. And allows us to take the next step forward towards that vision, towards that expectation, towards that goal, towards that standard. Whatever labeling you want to use, it doesn't really matter. Because this is about the internal. Labels and words have more power as we share. So I can look at let's use a word like God. I tend not to talk about God too much, because other people have their own preconceived notions of it. But I believe God, creator, universe, spirit, higher self, all these things are really the same thing. It's just how are we using this language internally and externally to move ourselves through our daily lives, and our presence. And the more universal, I guess you could say, the more open we are for variation, the stronger that we can be, the more resilient we can be, because we're not caught up in all the small things that in 5 years aren't going to matter. And I really think that's a great way to really look at things. For me, when things show up, I ask myself the question, why is this going to matter in 5 years? Why is this going to matter in a year? Why is this going to matter in 10 years? Is this going to matter after I'm gone and buried? Is it going to change history as we know it? And most likely, when the answer is no, well, then we can let that go with gratitude and grace, and go, okay, well, that was what it was, and now let's move into what can be. We had a learning experience. We had a trial. We had some challenges. We had some setbacks, whatever, and life, that happens. But what are we going to do about it can only happen from the place of presence after we have the new awareness. And healthy relationships, for example, are ones that tend to want to work through the challenges and communicate, and all the various different things, rather than pointing fingers and blaming and shaming and creating guilt, and all those various different things that happen. And especially in our culture right now, the some of the biggest challenges that I think we face as a humanity is being able to hold ourselves personally accountable, and nobody else. When someone shares their opinion or their insights with you, be grateful, because that's an opportunity to get insight that you weren't going to have out without them sharing. However, that's their projection, that's their standard, that's their expectations, that's the way that they're currently at based on where they are in their journey. And if they haven't gone through a whole lot of trials and tribulations, they're going to be they're not going to have they're going to have they're going to be impacted more. That's why they say that you want to love people who have gone through adversity. You want to surround yourself. I mean, even in business, they a lot of business entrepreneurs that I know and business owners that I know, they could give a crap less about your successes. They want to know about your setbacks and how you overcame them. When the adversity came, how did you show up? Because that shows the strength of your character and your maturity, and all those various different things. And that lets us continue on the path and continue to go. I hear you, Brett. Sometimes that happens. I mean, I went through divorce too, and things are always great in the beginning. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't get married, right? And it's through those cycles of learning and growth that sometimes brings up some things, and it makes it impossible for us to move forward. And that's really unfortunate. I feel for you, and I grieve for you, because I know the pain of heartbreak. I know what that's like, and it's very challenging, and it's very daunting when we really love somebody, and no matter how hard we try, we just seem to be in different vibrations and different planes, and that's just kind of how it moves. Yeah, I hear you, Gene. Gene says, I've learned not to set expectations in life. And I agree with that. The challenge that I have, though, and this has just been my personal experience, when I don't set expectations or vocalize expectations, a lot of times I have unconscious ones. And the other thing is how do we know that we're still on track? And that's where having a big vision is important, right? I know you have a huge vision with your property out there and retreats and the farming and all that, and it's amazing. And I love seeing the progress that you guys have made over the last few years. So if that's working for you, keep on going, girlfriend. And I don't think expectations are necessarily a bad thing. It's just a standard, right? Like, this is how I want to do things. This is how I'd like to do things. And the more openly and willingly we can communicate those things, the more we can collaborate. The tricky things is not having the expectations. I know, I try to help people out without having an expectation of return. And one thing that showed up for me last year through some betrayal was I had expectations, that we were friends and family, and we were going to walk through, hell and back with each other. And when that didn't happen, I was emotionally I was emotionally devastated, because I really loved and cared about these people. And I never in a million years thought they would do what they did. And, and I remember a conversation. It was like, but I did this and this and this, and I was your go-to person. And, whenever you needed help, whatever you needed, whenever you asked for help, I was there and I helped and I did what you were asked. And how could you ever think that I wasn't there for you? Because I was there for you as much as I could be based on our communication. If I was doing things that you weren't, if I was not doing things that you expected me to do and they weren't voiced, then it's hard for me to meet that expectation or that standard. I hear you, Gene. It's a thing. She says here. Let's throw this up here. I think we can throw that up there. I've definitely learned only to give my energy where it's reciprocated, and I love that. I am wholeheartedly a believer of Heine and the sacred reciprocity, and when you give, you get. All the time, and that's where expectations can kind of hang us up a little bit, because sometimes we get less than we expected, and that can lead to resentment, and that can be very challenging. And but it is about a quality of mutual exchange of energy. If we're constantly given to somebody and wholeheartedly and completely open, and we're giving them everything we got, all our energy and all our time, and all those things, and it doesn't come back, that's where resentment comes in, right? And that can be a heavy burden, and that can be really hard to handle. From personal experience, it really showed me where I still had some areas of growth, in 2023 when I was met with that, right? And what I've learned from that situation is that we can't force people to rise to our standard. And I gave because I wanted to give. I absolutely adored and was completely in love with the person that I was in relationship with. Our vision for the future, and how we were going to live and what we wanted to do, and all that stuff was so aligned. Our daily life was pretty awesome. And through the cycles of life, I started seeing some inconsistencies within our relationship. And the more I tried to vocalize and voice these concerns, the more challenging our relationship got. And that's part of growth, and when we separated, it was unexpectedly, and there were some challenges there. And again, I'm still in a place where I'm like, we can still work on this. We can still heal through this. The connections sometimes need some space so we can, as individuals, heal and grow. But I don't ever believe that we can't come back together, and create a new beginning and a new start, and continue to walk together, because that to me is unconditional love. I can attribute to the fact that things were done and said in my family's systems that could easily have, one of the examples that I can give is when I was 13, me and my brother got in a fight and we messed up the house pretty bad. And my dad came home from a day of work really stressed out, I'm guessing. And, basically, I can remember the words, I can remember where I was standing, all that kind of stuff. And he said, I wish you were never my son. And the first thing I said is, done. I can make that happen for you. And I went, packed a bag, and I left. And of course came back later on, and there was a few years ago when I was going through this through my own journey of healing, and we got into a heated thing, and I told him I hated him, and you know, I didn't know that he was still carrying that until a couple weeks ago when he had mentioned it, and he hadn't forgiven me for it. I, of course, at that time when it was brought up to me, I said, "Wow, I'm sorry, Dad." I can remember that conversation, and I remember, I was going through a lot of stuff with the house, and all these challenges, and I was trying to share with you what I was going through, and I was kind of proud of how it was all showing up, and all you did was shame me because I should have done it your way and not the way that I had handled it. And I reacted out of that because I was so tired of always feeling not enough. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how hard I achieved, no matter what happened, I was always being told that, I could have done it better because I could have done it his way. And I couldn't do it his way because I wasn't him. And it all worked out exactly how we were wanting it to work out. And so I was feeling a little righteous, right? Because at the time I was still married to my wife, and we had discussed, okay, well, what is it that we want, and what do we want to happen, and how do we want it to happen? What at the end result, what are we hoping for? And I was able to get that. And so, in my mind and heart, we had won. We had achieved it the way we wanted to. And when I shared that story with him, he just berated me because, we surrendered the property and, all this stuff. And, how dare we, let that stuff go? And it was like, this was the best because, even if we would have fought it, and I would have still had this house that was needing a lot of foundational structure repair, where, I was told it would be cheaper and better to knock the house over and start again than it would be to fix the foundation. And it was a house that we were robbed in multiple times. I mean, we couldn't leave a window open, it seemed like, because if we did, somebody would fricking climb through it. And so I was like, I'm grateful to be out of there. I've been wanting to get out of there for a long time. Now we're out. Now we're free. We don't have any ties to it anymore. And, it is what it is. And, they knocked it over. And I shared that story a couple of weeks ago, and more in depth if you want to learn more about the story, because I don't want to keep rehashing the same redirection stories, if at all possible. And Gene says, I'd love to talk to you too, in person one day. I'd love to get up to your farm, especially after it warms up a little bit, so we can spend some time outside, and really get to enjoy it. But, and yeah, resentment is heavy, man. And if we don't have a place to clear it, it just stacks up on us and gets heavier and heavier and heavier. So we have to have great ways, and that really goes into our title here of how to manage, your expectations, experiences, and standards. Letting go of resistance and resentment is a great way to stay on track. And early in my career, when I was being met with a lot of success, I had a couple phrases that did me well, and I love when friends remind me of them. It's kind of a funny thing, but it's like some will, some won't. So what? Like the people that are meant to walk with you are going to walk with you, and that sounds great. But when you really, believe that somebody is on your side, and you continue to hold space for them to walk alongside you, and then they turn around and stab you in the back, that gets a little more challenging. Not to have some unconscious resentment, right? And carry a little bit of stuff along with you. Energy healing is a great way to let some of that stuff go too. And one of the things I was reminded today in conversation was they said one of my other sayings was, you can't say the right thing to the wrong person. You can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And the only thing that separates the two is timing. And I still truly believe in that one. Because, as we grow through life, our perspectives change, our values change, our character changes, and some things that could have been said to me as a teenager, I was a punk rocker. I dressed funny, and I had all different colors hair, and all that stuff, and people could push my buttons by calling me a freak. And now today I take that as a great compliment. And why? Because I don't want to be normal. Normal scares me, because that's complacency. That's not stepping into your own power and being yourself. Now, it doesn't mean that I have to go dress. I shared, hi, Joanne. I shared the other day about meeting with a coach, and, I was sharing with him what we were doing here at Enhancing Your World Holistic Center. And he said, there's no money in that. And he said, but I still want to have a meeting with you because you don't look like one of those freaky people. He's like, you got normal hair, and you dressed up like you were in a business meeting. And I was like, well, you dress for the occasion sometimes, but if you would see my house, I got, you can't help but to know that I'm a spiritual individual that walks with nature, because most of my things contain nature. I got skulls and crystals and feathers and natural art and all that stuff all over my house. So there's nothing there, and that's my standard, right? Like, my standard is I would rather showcase, create with sustainable products, sustainable things. So, when I find, cool feathers, or I find bones, or I find things, on my nature walks and things like that, I incorporate them into decor and things like that, and art, because I think it's cool. And I enjoy that a lot more than going to the decor store and buying some stuff that later will probably just be replaced by other stuff, because fashion, all that stuff. But that's my standard. My standard of living is to protect Mother Nature, as best I can. So I work really hard at not buying a lot of things with packagings, not buying things that I don't need, bringing reusable containers and things like that. A friend of mine was at my house the other day, and she was kind of razzing me a little bit for all my carry out containers. And I'm like, well, why would I go to the store and buy reusable containers when they give me them at the restaurant? Like, one, it would help it helps save some income, and two, like, they're just as good as what I could buy in the store sometimes. And if I leave it behind at a party or something like that, well, then it's not a big deal. So it's about being sustainable, right? And being resilient. That's an important thing. How to manage your expectations, experiences, and standards is your resiliency, and being able to get back to your vision, back to your path after you've been knocked down a little bit, when you've had some adversity, some challenges. And it's okay to take a break. I mean, you have to sometimes. You have to let your nervous system regulate before moving back into the stuff. if you're working out and you have sore muscles and you don't give yourself time to recover and you just keep working out on those sore muscles, you're going to hurt yourself way worse than if you took a couple of days off and allowed that process to naturally take its course and then move through there. Wow, that sounds awesome, Joanna. Or Joanne, I'm sorry. So Joanne said she found a tree that someone had cut down and she painted it and put fairy lights on it. Now it's in. That's phenomenal. That's great, man. Thanks so much for sharing that. I have a couple stumps in my house too. Of course, the ash borer came through and killed a lot of our trees on our property, and we just naturally let them fall down because the insects and the birds and all nature still uses it until it can't anymore. And one of them fell down and I had a woodpecker home in it, and I was like, man, that'd be cool. And so as we cut it up for firewood and stuff like that, I saved that piece, and now it's part of an altar that I have outside with some of my natural finds, some of my butterflies and moths and animal skins and snake skins and feathers and things like that. I think it's kind of cool. So I love that. Thanks so much for sharing, Joanne. But I do have some questions for you guys, because this isn't about me just talking at you all, because I may be a teacher, but all I know is what I've gone through and what I've experienced and what I've learned through lots of study over the last 20 plus years. But what are some of your ways? What are some of your questions that you have about maintaining your vision for 2024? What challenges, what setbacks have you been bumped into over the last few weeks that either made you give up your goal? It sure does make you appreciate it more, instead of just letting it go by the wayside, Joanne. And that, and that's, resourceability, right? Like when we're open to seeing things in a new light, we can see new possibilities, new opportunities. And then with our ability, skill set, to learn to craft or to carve or do those things, I mean, the possibilities are endless. And at the end of the day, you have a unique piece of art that no one else can have because there's only one. It makes it priceless. It's awesome. So what are some of your standards? What are the standards for you? What standards do you have about life? What are non-negotiables in your life? If somebody continues to do something over and over and over and over and over again, and you've talked with them and say, I really wish you wouldn't do that. That really hurts me when you do that. I understand I don't have control over it, but I'm just letting you know how it affects me. Is there a way that we can come together in collaboration with this? Is there a way that we can communicate and move through some of these challenges? I know one of my challenges sometimes is when I get excited, both in a positive and in a negative way, I tend to raise my voice. And it's unconscious. Oh, there's Larkin.
Well, kind of. I'm getting my coats on. I'm packing my food. Sorry, everyone, but our weather here has been like 5 degrees at night. And my husband went to turn my one horse out today. She hasn't been out very much in 2 days. Nobody was out. As soon as he left, she was out. So to stay healthy, they got to move. So you're going to kind of travel along with me today. But I think this is the perfect topic, Chris. I've been dying to talk about this. And actually, we talked about it a little bit with Susie yesterday. Just what we're talking about. Patch me up. Where were you guys?
Oh, we were talking about all the different things, and I was asking questions about, people's standards and how they want to live, and Joanne's just shared this with us. says, I was confronted by my dad as he has a problem with my spiritual journey, but I was inspired by my guides that I don't need his approval for my spiritual journey and my way of life. I am now 56 and I agree with them.
That is fantastic. Wow. I love that that's coming into our conversation.
Right.
Today. Because yesterday, I don't know if you listened, but Susie and I, we're referring to spirit teams and, following your intuition, staying close to nature so that you can stay close to your intuition, which of course helps you connect to your spirit team, your spirit guides and angels and loved ones, so that you have a greater sense of guidance. So that's really positive. That's wonderful to hear people applying that, because I see a lot of people talking about such things but not actually applying them or believing the messages they receive. So that's really cool.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I also think it's important, even if, and me, I love the spiritual path, so I'm not blasting it by any means, but when we have a desire to move towards something, whatever kind of goal it is, even if it's going to be a healthy one, how many times have we wanted to change our diet or something like that, and somebody tells us that we're silly or stupid, or I can't believe that we eat this way, or whatever, to try to get us to kind of pull back a little bit, to be more like them, to keep them in their comfort zone, and being able to say, I can respect the way you want to do things, but I choose to do this for me, even if it's not a permanent thing. I want to know what it's like. I know when I went vegan a few years ago, for almost a year, it was really challenging for everybody that I surrounded myself with at the time. A lot of people anyway, because they're not vegan. They don't know how to live that lifestyle. So they didn't know how to feed me. And I'm like, it's pretty easy. Fruits and vegetables and nuts, and a lot of times I would just bring my own food, because then they didn't have to worry about it. But that was because I wanted to maintain my standard, how I wanted to try to have an experience of life. And I don't want to expect others to have to accommodate my way of life. If they want to join, if they have some curiosity, if they want to have some, if they want to have a little expansion and try something new, I'm all about sharing with them. But if that doesn't even turn them on by any means, then continue your walk, my friend. We'll eat that juicy cheeseburger in front of me while I'm eating my salad. It's not going to offend me, and I'm not going to sit here and preach to you why you shouldn't be eating that juicy burger while I'm eating the salad. That's not my place. Now, if you ask me why I would shift, like today, I shared a story, Larkin, where I don't eat pork, and I was making a sandwich at work at my side gig, and I was going to, and she was frying bacon on the other side of the flat top. And I asked her, because I always ask, because that's not my domain in there, if I can use the flat top, because I didn't know, maybe they had an order or something they needed to prepare. And she said, well, if you don't mind it being next to the bacon. And I was like, absolutely not. In fact, I might get a little grease in there and tease me a little bit, flavor it up a little bit. And it happened. It was fine. But it was just learning to have a little bit of grace with what's showing up. So many of us want to control the situation all the time. And it's work to always try to be in control of circumstances. And it's led me to burnout in the past. What do you think about that?
Here, hold on 1 second. This can go off to the car and soak in the cooler. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get out of here.
I know.
No, I agree with you, and I think that again it goes back to, you know, it sounds like I'm just continuing to reiterate the same things, but these are the same basic things that are really important. Like, if you're gonna stand in your power and have say in your own life, you have to reclaim the power of your mind. And if you don't, the rest of the world will.
Right.
And, you know, yesterday we were talking about whether you like it or not, you know, you are nature, you're part of nature. And when you stay connected to nature, instead of just allowing like social media and, you know, religion and things to take over, politics, belief systems in society, either those are going to run your life or you are. And either way, it's your choice. So, right. You know, I think if people really want to stand in their power and be manifesting authentically, that means that's what's going to be what's in alignment with you, that feels best to you. And then we have to focus on getting in that center. Your whole life is your spiritual path. So all these labels and titles that we have are just things that our mind wants to use. You know, our mind is obsessed with having these labels and wanting to categorize and identify everything. And so I think if people can kind of step back and simplify and take it back to the basics, then you can really identify with, okay, who am I? And that takes some work. I mean, by the time you're an adult in our world today, that takes a lot of work to get back to really who are you and who do you want to be and what do you want? What do you think you want that you've been programmed to believe you want and need, and what do you really want and need?
Right.
You know, I think this is really an important distinction to make, and most people aren't even aware they're making it. I mean, most of my clients come to me thinking they want one thing, and that's not even what they want.
Right.
And so we have to remember that everything is a process as well. And
right.
Like you were talking about allowing, so that live and let live. When you do that, you're allowing things to go through their process. You're allowing yourself and others to make realizations that they wouldn't make if they're too busy resisting someone trying to force them to change. You know, you'll notice people are easily brainwashed by people who want to manipulate and control them. But if you have a good suggestion.
Yeah, you lock up there, Larkin. I was wondering how that was going to work. Now I know.
After coaching for so long, that about this time of year, I know you've already mentioned this, but about this time of year, everybody starts to panic because they start to judge whether they're being successful already or failing already with their goals. And so that starts to become a sensitive subject, and a lot of people start to get depressed because they're like, oh, you know, it's already partway through January and I haven't done this or that yet. I haven't done this much yet. And that starts to become a sore subject. And what I find is that becomes then the tone for a lot of people's, the rest of their year. You know, so I'm hoping that this broadcast today will help people realize and remind them this is an ongoing process, and you have more choices than you realize. It's not just going to, you know, be an up. It's not just going to be a spiraling up, everything you want, everything's perfect all the way, you know, to the end of the year. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of unrealistic. People do that a lot.
Well, we can't grow without adversity, right? And you know, I try to remember and try to talk with my clients about the same thing. How boring would life get if everything we ever wanted came as fast as we ever wanted it?
That's true.
You know, because after a while you're like, I don't need anything else. You know, like I've already experienced what it's like to go here or do that, or to have this or to have that, or, you know, whatever. And it doesn't, it appreciation a lot of times comes from when we don't have things. Or we had things and we lost them.
Yeah, and I think we lose sight of the big picture anyway. You know, we have to remember there's a bigger picture, bigger than ourselves, right? There's a bigger process going on for us. And with the egoic mind, we tend to forget. The egoic mind always says it's always out for what it thinks it wants, right? So it's always, things are good, things are happy, things are the way they should be, things are going well when we're getting our way. It really is that simple. When we're not getting our way, we're grumpy, we're pissed, we're depressed, we're anxious, we're panicked, we're, you know, it's like, it's that whole concept of when things are the way I want them to be on the outside, I'll be happy.
Right.
Everything will be fine. But when things aren't, you believe your thoughts. So I'm going to be depressed. I'm going to be upset. We live by conditions, right? If this doesn't happen, then I'm going to be that, and then I'm going to be this. And if this doesn't happen, then I'm going to be that, and then I'll never be happy again. Okay, well, the interesting part is the thing I found the most difficult about coaching. The most difficult point was to get people to turn that corner where they realize that it doesn't work that way at all.
Right.
You have to be at peace no matter what is happening. You have to be able to find joy no matter what is happening. When that is what you're driving from the inside, that's when the external flips.
Right.
And the full circle, the point I'm getting to, guys, is it's connecting really with what you were saying before, Chris, that if we're going to look at stepping into our power for the year and looking at being able to see life as a process and appreciating it, that we are getting closer to maybe what we're aspiring to, we have to also recognize that we have to embrace this larger picture. We have to embrace not knowing. Like, it's okay to not know, you know, and that's another big part is we always think we have to know what's next.
Right.
We have to know how it's going to work out. And the truth is you don't ever really know.
Right.
You don't know. So you can feel secure. Oh, I know I'm getting engaged. I'm with this person the rest of my life. And so I feel secure because being engaged means I'm going to be with them ever and ever. Does it really?
Nope.
Tomorrow, do you know what's going to happen the next week? The truth is we don't know. And this is what the old sages knew, the Tibetan monks. This is what they knew and they tried to teach, which is why their way of teaching was giving you a bucket with a hole in the bottom.
Right.
And saying, come back when the bucket is full. Well, symbolic of our own path, right?
Right. You got to plug that hole.
Well, the message is, everybody, you can't just say relax to everybody, but what I would like to do, I think we both try to do this in this broadcast, is just kind of shake everybody up a little in that you've got to shake up your perspective. You've got to loosen up your belief that if things aren't this way, this and that isn't going to work.
Right.
Because things are always working out for you.
Right.
But not if you don't allow the time and space for that to happen. If you panic and flip out every time you feel anxious or you get an adrenaline rush, that's how your life's going to be.
Right.
So and I know I'm kind of summarizing all this because I wasn't on the first half of this program, but
I've
always told my clients, because I made this my rule and it really helped, make sure your state of consciousness is your number one priority.
Right.
No matter what is happening, because every choice you make and every result you get will come from your state of consciousness. So make sure you have that right first.
Right.
If that ties into what you've been talking about, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, to some degree. Hi, Chrissy.
I can't see who's on, so.
Yeah, no.
Facebook user, I know what you mean. Okay, I think that was a long time ago, though.
Yeah.
Okay. see here. Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Joanne's saying, but you know that word love is really tricky, right? And everybody kind of has a different standard of what love means. Um, I think honor and value yourself, take care of yourself, is part of love. It's not avoiding adversity.
Confidence doesn't come from self-love.
Right.
Confidence comes through action.
Right.
It comes through messing up. It comes through making mistakes. It comes through doing what you're scared to death to do. Confidence really has nothing to do with self-love at all.
I would agree with that.
Not have self-love.
Right.
And I have to say, from spending years in the coaching industry, Joanne, I hate to tell you this, but a lot of what you're sharing there, not to knock it, but it is a brainwashed message that has been shared, especially by female coaches, for women, to get women into their coaching program and keep them there. I'm not saying that self-love is not important, but what happens is you are love. If you're so focused on self-love and trying to identify what that means, you miss sharing your love. It starts to become a competition between you and everybody else. I have never thought about self-love. I love myself like I would everybody else.
Right.
That's not even a question for me. Going to the spa is not self-love. That's self-care. Okay, right. That can be a form of self-love. Self-love is when you're able to love others, and I don't mean be walked all over. See, this is what's being confused. This is what I think the coaching industry has really screwed up for women a lot, because we're the ones into this whole self-love crap. Everything already is love. The question is, what are you letting in? So if you don't have boundaries, for example, if you are in relationships or you can't tell people no, or you're letting someone use you and walk all over you, that doesn't even mean you don't love yourself. It means that you didn't learn to have boundaries. It means that you maybe were in codependent relationships. It means those are habits and patterns you learned. It's important to step up and care for yourself equally, which is what people don't do. Right. But the reason I'm bringing this up, Joanne, is that, and I hope you're being receptive to this, because the problem is that I feel like coaches are encouraging self-love, but that doesn't teach you the boundaries of self-respect. And it actually forces people to feel unloved, because you're so busy saying, am I treating myself with self-love, or am I treating someone else with self-love? Because that's what the ego does. It's the ego that says, oh, you have to have self-love. Okay, how about self-respect? How about making tough choices that give you self-confidence, right? Like, I didn't always like to do big group readings online. I'm confident with it because I did it when it terrified me. It didn't mean I didn't believe in my own skills either. Right? So, this is very important that you guys, understand this and don't buy into the fad that's being sold over self-love. Self-love is not more important than anything else. You get out there and you start rescuing animals and showing kindness and giving love. Doesn't mean being walked all over and sacrificing yourself. Guess what? Your own feelings of self-love and appreciation, that's how they emerge. Not by going out and getting your nails done and going to the spa and doing self-care. That will make you start to feel hollow. It actually has the opposite effect. So just, look into that for yourself. The point is it doesn't have to be, and it doesn't need to be an issue. It's already there.
Right.
That's what's so important. And I know,
thanks,
Chris, you've done
that
with your healing work with people. You probably have seen that in all of its different forms. And I'm so glad you went up, It's a very important thing to talk about.
Right. Well, and I was just watching something the other day, and they talked about, why are the divorces going up, so much over the last decade, and what was said was, well, because over the last decade, we as a society are now saying that it's better to be single than it is to be in a challenging relationship. But how are you supposed to grow if you're not in a challenging relationship?
But we're taught they're not supposed to be challenging.
Right.
Supposed to be right. So 100 years ago, people were in these relationships, and they would build a bond of closeness. Maybe even if they were a marriage that was made up by their families, and they weren't, it wasn't about falling in love. It was about surviving. And as time went by, they grew closer because of everything they went through together. Sometimes, like my great grandparents, yeah, they were madly in love. But the truth is that they went through life's times together, and they knew how and taught partnership. Our culture does not like to maintain a sense of history or passing down generational wisdom. We are taught, every generation is taught, well, the generation before fucked everybody up for us, fucked it up for us. It's all screwed up. You messed it up for us. It's all your fault. We're going to create our own new ways. Okay, so you reinvent the wheel 1,000 times. Have we not learned anything from that?
Right.
Right? So maybe the wheel is made out of different material, but the wheel still works. So, again, that's another way of controlling society and taking away power from the majority of people in a society. Do you guys not see a theme here? I mean, everything is geared to brainwash us for this. It has been for thousands of years. There's a huge control factor that has to do in society. And so one way you take away the power is you take away the family system. You take away what works in relationships so that people feel isolated and alone. Because how do you take power away? You isolate.
Right.
Right? Divide and conquer.
Right.
That's not a new term.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to build community when we're all focused on ourselves.
Exactly. Really, it's absolutely true, and that's why I got out of coaching corporate, because these corporate women, or they were obsessed with, I have to work an hour a day, 3 days a week, and I want to make $1 million doing it, and I better be able to have 3 massages a week, and go shopping this many days, and have my husband watch the kids this many days a week, and have this many girl nights out. And I mean, it's like, what is this? What is going on? So basically, you only want to spend 3 hours a week doing what you don't like. Well, isn't that nice? And that's supposed to be self-love and self-care. No one can be satisfied doing that, because in the end, you're not satisfied. Right. If you're trying to reap rewards, false rewards all the time, what's happening on the inside?
Right.
You're becoming hollow. There's no fulfillment. And we have a world of people that want to do that.
Right. Oh, and I can speak with that. I got overwhelmed with all the things we have to do to run these holistic businesses and coaching, and all this crazy content creation and all that. And so then you start kind of doing the bare minimum, just because and then things aren't manifesting the way you want, and then you talk yourself into reducing yourself a little bit more, because I'm not and it's like a perpetual trap. Where if you go, okay, well, I gotta just let that. I mean, you were a good example a couple weeks ago. You're like, I just need to take some time off, so because I'm gonna burn out if I don't take the time. Once you're back, you go right back to it again. I mean, I did that last year. Took time off. Why? Because I was burnt out. I was exhausted. And I couldn't continue to do the things that I wanted to do and show up in the energy that I wanted to show up in. So I knew it was time to take a pause, and that's what happened.
And last week, everything is habits and repetition. And it is.
Mm-hmm.
I've said that for years as well. I think that, again, going back to the olden days, what people think is out of date and don't want to hear about, it worked. You know, the same thing that worked when people were in survival mode works now.
Right.
They took Sunday off. I don't care why you take Sunday off. A day of rest. Okay, you don't want it to be religious. Who cares?
Right.
It's important. There's a reason why it's important to take a full day off.
Right.
Mentally, emotionally, physiologically, physically. You know, going to my grandfather always said, you know, early to bed, earlier to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Well, you know, I don't care that I still use the term makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. If you're offended by that, you don't belong on this broadcast. I mean, who cares? Sometimes I'm going to say he, sometimes I'm going to say she. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I mean, really, it doesn't matter. That's ego.
Right.
But the point is that phrase is important because they used to pass that phrase on to their kids. And there's a reason for that. You know, I'm a night owl by nature, and it makes life very hard. I have to be right now because of all my time with the horses. But I'm always tired because I'm doing my work in the middle of the night. If we all had a habit of getting up with the birds, eating breakfast, taking our walk, doing, you know, we had a consistent schedule all the time, life would be so much easier.
Right.
So those little things that are, you know, were taught that worked for people a long time ago, when you look and you think, wow, how did my grandparents get so much done? We get a lot, you know, we think we get more done because we have technology today, but actually we're not more efficient today. We can send 100 emails faster, but who do I know that could work, do laundry, change the bed sheets, take care of 7 kids, feed everyone, make food by hand, all in the same day?
Right.
Like my grandmother used to every single day. Plus, there was a whole list of other things that my great-grandmother did.
Well,
and
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I even said this a few weeks ago, I think, you know, there was a study done, you know, from, you know, our generation to like our grandparents' generation. And they said because of technology, we're saving 30 hours a week. You know, we don't have to work as hard, right? We're saving 30 hours a week.
Social media. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so what do, and the question was deepened. They were like, well, what do you do? What do we do with those 30 hours a week? Oh, we watch television. So still spending the same amount of time, but what are we actually getting accomplished? What are we doing? What are we investing our energy in? And a lot of us spend a lot of time being entertained and comfortable. Yep. And I'm guilty for that. I took a day off on Sunday, and you know, I watched television. It was
it's addictive for all of us. I want to say hi to Samantha too. Hi, Samantha. Welcome. Good to see you.
She and Chrissy, hello.
Selfish people are never satisfied. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. But again, kind of what you're saying too, Chris, is when you have a society where everyone wants things handed to them, they want immediate gratification, and they want to be entertained, you will have unsatisfied people.
Right.
You know, and we're kind of missing the point. I mean, I see so many of my friends whose kids are growing up, and it's like they're not allowed to tell them no. They're allowed to give them whatever they want. Their counselors and therapists are saying, oh, just let them have what they want so they don't get upset. Part of, you know, being a kid is hard. And part of the reason being a kid is hard is because that's when you're supposed to learn how to handle life. You know, we learn to be disappointed with the shelter and supposed shelter and love and guidance of our adults around us. You don't have that if the adult is like, oh my God, honey, hold on. Let me get this for you. Hold on. Don't be upset. Don't be upset. Let them be upset.
Right.
If at some point in life you are going to be upset, you're going to be hurt, you're going to be disappointed, you're going to be heartbroken. If you don't learn to handle it when you are developing and don't learn to handle your own emotions and your own reactions, what, pray tell, is going to happen as an adult?
Right.
So, you know, I mean, again, guys, this is a money-making thing. society has been guided into this because we make money off of the entertainment industry. Everything is geared towards the economy. Eventually that kills an economy, guys. If we don't have healthy individuals, we don't have an economy. We made for a short amount of time, but we won't even have a world that can have an economy. I mean, an economy is no good if your world doesn't exist and everyone's running amok. You know,
or all the resources are so polluted that we can't actually live. You know,
exactly. So you have to have a healthy self to have a healthy community, and part of that means, you know, we have this mass collective idea that everyone has to be happy, everyone has to be entertained, everybody has to be rich, everybody has to have it easy. It can't be that way because that's not the nature of life. So be there to love and guide and protect your kids, your loved ones when they're struggling. It doesn't mean intentionally cause them to suffer. It means help them learn how to deal with struggles and difficulties so that they don't suffer as an adult. Because what we learn as kids, we then apply as adults. So the self-satisfaction Joe was talking about, hi Tia, welcome. It actually comes from within us. It comes from what we do. You know, there may be things we do that aren't fun, but they're satisfying. And then we feel good about ourselves. And then we build confidence. And then we feel and experience our self-love and appreciation, right?
so I mean that kind of wraps up like how to manage your expectations, experiences, and standards, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'll be at the barn in 10 minutes and I'll
Okay.
have to pop off. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the point of today, guys, was to say, hey, don't get frustrated, upset, depressed, anxious if you're halfway through January and you're going, oh my God, I've already failed my New Year's resolutions.
Right.
You know, remember, it's a process. It's not over yet. It's still just January.
Right.
You know, and what I went over with my clients before New Year's was, remember that you may not get the exact or complete outcomes that you set out for this year. But if that is your priority and those are your intentions, then life will give you what you need to get to go through the process of getting there. So, for example, last year, one of mine was to simplify. Did I simplify last year? No, it was an epic fail. If anything, I complicated my life more by transitioning my business, taking on another horse. Like, there was all sorts of stuff that happened that I did not simplify. I complicated drastically. Does that mean I failed my goals last year? No. Because it brought me to a new level of awareness of, okay, what do I really have to do to simplify? It brought me to a new level of awareness of what and how I think and make choices that does not allow me to simplify. And guess what? I couldn't have made my goal of simplifying without the realizations that I made. So sometimes that means things get harder before they get easier. That's okay. Things are working out for you. You are working towards your goals if you're persistent. But it may take longer than you think. Undoubtedly it will. And it may not happen the way you think. Undoubtedly it won't.
Well, I've always been told that you know you're getting close to achieving what you want when you get the test of how bad you really want it, which means everything falls apart and it gives you all the reasons to stop moving forward, and then if you can continue, because we only fail when we quit,
Right. Yep.
and
right.
and as long as we go, okay, this is a setback, that's fine, like I got knocked down, now I gotta get back up again, and there's that adage, get knocked down 100 times, get up 101 or whatever it is. But and I love what you said about the generational thing, because some of the most influential teachings that I've had came from like Napoleon Hill and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Those are old books, and I remember talking to someone about it, and they said, well, "Why do you like those books so much? You know, like there's all these new books. Why do you like the old books?" And I was like, "Because it gives me distance. It gives me distance. Like some of the, some of the newer books will teach you how to do technology and do the process is in daily life a little easier. But like the old timer books, like they were really about character and reputation and legacy and doing being the best version of yourself and not just the outcomes and look at my listen to what I have to say. I know how to make money. Here's my Ferrari to prove it. And what we probably don't know is they leased it for the day. They probably don't even own it, and they just leased it through the marketing, right?
That's true. And even some of the guys that haven't, I mean, there's a guy named Ty, somebody out there who years ago.
Yeah, that was who I was thinking about. Yeah.
You thinking about him? I thought you were. He's one of the biggest scam artists out there. He's done like 10 different gigantic scams that have made him like tens of millions of dollars, and people are still buying his stuff.
Right.
So I mean, a lot of this unrealistic, and I do not like that word, so I use it very, very tenderly, with the greatest respect. If I'm saying realistically, I mean it very specifically. It is very unrealistic, the life that everyone is being brainwashed to expect they should have. Everyone should have 3 to 10 houses around the world and be making multi-million dollars. Everyone should be buying, $100,000 cars every year. Everyone should be able to do this while working just 3 to 5 hours a week. Right. From their home. I mean, really, it's just as bad as the magazines where everybody is photoshopped and then you're expected to look like that.
Right.
And so it's very dangerous, actually, because it's a big part of the mental health issues that we're seeing in the world right now.
Right. Well, and what good is it? I mean, with the environment, I mean, everybody, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this in China, but where they pass those subsidies for electric cars. So now these taxi companies, they bought a bunch of electric cars and they're just sitting rotting out in a field now, because they just wanted the government subsidies. It was all and like to go out and buy clothes all the time and to go out and do all these things over and over and over and over and over again. It's not sustainable for our environment.
Yeah, and again, I think you guys will hear this over and over again. We have to go back and look at our real priorities versus what society is telling us. Remember, society is the collective egoic mind, stemming from a particular type of individual ego. And that's usually a few people that had an idea, and then they breed that idea, such as the big shopping center owners back in the 60s that decided we needed to have a throwaway society so that people would have to rebuy the same items every year or every season.
Right.
That's how now, but see, generations have gone by. So you guys will buy a hose and say, well, this hose will only last 1 year. Well, guess what? Those hoses used to last a decade. But you're paying the same price that someone would have, relatively, depending on the times, the same price you would have paid.
Right.
People are they're spending $1 million on houses that are basically made of cardboard and put together in 3 months with no yard. They're pieces of crap, and they're spending $1 million on them versus solid stone or solid brick houses on several acres costing the same price. Right. And the problem is generationally, see, this has been accepted now. As it's accepted by a generation, then it's accepted by the next generation. It becomes the norm.
Right.
So young people think, oh, this is fine, this is normal, this is how much realtors right out of realtor school, this is what it costs today. Not really, guys, you're getting screwed.
Right.
But we don't know this because our standards and our quality have been let down. So it's really up to you guys to, it takes more work, but you need to decide what are the standards and quality that match your life, your goals. It's your path and your choice. You don't have to follow, everybody else. It's just going to take a little more work to figure out how to carve your own path. Because believe me, guys, the masses are going nowhere fast. They really are. So I think that's important. So I don't know about you, Chris, but I always like to get off and invite people, as we close up a broadcast, invite people to do something, and I invite you guys to check in. This is my invitation. Check in with, where are you right now already, halfway through January, with mentally, emotionally, with your goals? Where are you in your attitude and how you're looking at or evaluating your situation? How can you support yourself instead of criticize or judge yourself, so that you are, it's up to you to set yourself up for success every day, every week, every month of the year with your New Year's goals and aspirations. Don't give up. Allow them to morph. Allow the things you don't like what you're seeing or how it's going. Just translate it, morph it, make something new and different out of it. See what it's trying to tell you and what messages it's delivering. It doesn't mean you're a failure, as Chris said. Unless you give up, you haven't failed, right? It's simply about awareness. And how can you make the best out of it and set yourself up for success? That's my recommendation.
Well, I mean, I can't touch anything. I mean, you said it all right there. So good job.
All right.
No, it's so good. That's why we teamed up, right? Like, are you kidding?
Yeah, at least we're on the same page, right?
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Chris, for getting us started. I want to thank everybody who joined us. And remind everybody, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're brand new and trying to grow that up there. Check out our other social medias for both of us. We both have different things that we offer on there throughout the week so that you can have entertainment and support.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Larkin. Thank you for everybody that joined us today, commented, questions, likes and hearts and all the things. Thank you for your participation. This show wouldn't be worth anything without you. We just be talking to ourselves. So very, very grateful for the opportunity to be here and do what we do. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.